The war for Troy had raged for a decade, a relentless struggle that seemed to have no end in sight. For 10 long years, the armies of Greece and Troy clashed beneath the shadow of the city's towering walls, each sunrise bringing new hope and each sunset leaving only despair. The land itself bore the scars of endless conflict, and the air was thick with the memory of lost friends and shattered dreams. Its fields were soaked in blood and sorrow, the earth itself mourning the countless lives lost. The cries of the wounded echoed across the plains, mingling with the silence of those who would never return home. Every blade of grass seemed to whisper the names of the fallen, and the rivers ran red with the cost of pride and vengeance. The city's mighty walls, once symbols of Troy's strength and prosperity, now stood as grim sentinels, holding back the enemy, but unable to shield the people from fear. Inside, the citizens lived in constant anxiety, their hearts heavy with grief for loved ones lost, and dread for what the next day might bring. All this suffering began with a single act when Paris, Prince of Troy, stole Helen from her home in Greece. That fateful decision ignited a conflict that would consume nations, drawing heroes and innocents alike into its flames. The abduction of Helen was more than a personal affair. It became the spark that set the world ablaze, and the consequences rippled through every family and every street. Amidst the chaos and destruction, one figure stood as Troy's greatest hope, Hector, the city's noble champion. He fought not for personal glory or fame, but out of a deep love for his home and the people who depended on him. Each time he took up his sword and shield, it was with the knowledge that the fate of Troy rested on his shoulders. After a brutal day spent pushing the Greeks back from the gates, Hector returned to the city, his body weary and his spirit burdened. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him, for he knew that every decision he made could mean life or death for those he loved. The fate of Troy was a heavy burden, and it showed in every step he took. As the massive Scaean gate creaked open, Hector left the horrors of the battlefield behind, if only for a moment. He was greeted by anxious citizens, their faces etched with worry and hope, desperate for any news that might bring comfort or relief. Their trust in him was both a blessing and a burden. Yet Hector could offer them little comfort. He spoke to the crowd with honesty, urging them to pray to the gods for mercy and strength. In his heart, he knew that the outcome of this war was beyond any mortal's control, and only the favor of the gods could tip the scales. As he walked the familiar streets of Troy, every face he passed, every stone beneath his feet, reminded him of what was at stake. The city was more than just walls and towers. It was a living tapestry of memories, families, and dreams that he was sworn to protect. His journey through Troy was more than a return from battle. It was a silent vow, renewed with every step to defend all he loved, no matter the cost. The shadows of the city seemed to whisper their trust in him, and he carried their hopes like armor. Hector pressed on to the palace, carrying a message from the seer Helenus, and longing for a brief moment of peace with his beloved wife and young son. In their embrace, he found the strength to face another day, even as the storm of war raged outside. The weight of his city's hope rested on his shoulders as he prepared for what lay ahead, knowing that every action he took would shape the destiny of Troy and echo through the ages. Hector entered the palace, his heart heavy with the weight of the city's fate. The grand halls, once symbols of Troy's glory, now felt like a labyrinth of despair, where Queen Hecuba greeted him with wine, hoping to ease his burdens. Her eyes, filled with concern, searched his face for any sign of hope. He refused, explaining he could not pray to Zeus with bloodied hands. The blood of battle still fresh, he felt unworthy to seek the god's favor. Instead, he relayed Helenus' message, a message that carried the weight of their last hope. The women of Troy must offer their finest robe to Athena, begging for mercy. This robe, a symbol of their devotion and desperation, was their final plea. Hecuba gathered the noble women, each one understanding the gravity of their task. They moved with a solemn grace, their hearts united in prayer, and together they carried the shimmering robe to Athena's temple. The streets of Troy, usually bustling with life, fell silent as the procession passed. They laid it before the goddess, praying for protection. Their voices, filled with hope and fear, echoed through the temple halls, and for the defeat of the Greek warrior Diomedes. Their prayers were fervent, each word a desperate cry for salvation, but Athena turned away. Their prayers went unanswered. The cold stone of the goddess's statue seemed to mock their desperation. The hope for divine intervention faded, and the shadow over Troy deepened. The city, once bright with promise, now lay under a pall of despair. Hector's faith in the gods was tested, but he pressed on, knowing the city's fate was now in mortal hands. His resolve, though shaken, remained unbroken. The women's silent procession through Troy was a testament to their desperation. Each step they took was a silent prayer, a plea for their city's survival. Even the most precious offerings could not sway the gods. The robe, a symbol of their hope, lay untouched, a stark reminder of their helplessness. The city braced itself for the coming storm. The air was thick with tension, every citizen aware of the impending doom. Hector's resolve hardened as he left the temple behind. He knew that the battle ahead would be fierce, but his spirit remained unyielding. Hector's next stop was Paris's chambers, where he found his brother polishing armor instead of fighting. The contrast was stark. Hector, the city's shield, and Paris, the cause of its suffering, lost in self-pity. Hector's anger flared. He rebuked Paris for hiding while others died for his mistake. Paris, chastened, admitted his shame and promised to return to battle. Helen too urged Paris to face his responsibilities, but Hector could not wait. The city needed him. He left Paris to his preparations, doubting his resolve. One duty remained before Hector returned to war to see his wife and son. The thought of his family was both a comfort and a torment. Hector's sense of duty outweighed his frustration with Paris. He turned away, focused on the loved ones he fought to protect. The fate of Troy depended on his strength, not his brother's. Hector hurried to his quarters, but Andromaque and their son were gone. Servants explained she'd rushed to the Scaean gate, frantic with worry, seeking news of Hector. She stood atop the watchtower, their child in her arms, scanning the battlefield for any sign of him. Hector understood her fear. She risked everything to see him once more. He retraced his steps, heart pounding, desperate for a final moment with his family. At the gate, he saw her descending, relief and dread mingling in her eyes. Their reunion was brief, shadowed by the knowledge that it might be their last. In the shadow of Troy's walls, the family clung to each other, cherishing what little time remained. Andromaque met Hector, her voice trembling with fear and love. She begged him not to return to battle, fearing widowhood and their son's orphanhood. She reminded him of her own losses, her family destroyed by Achilles, her mother lost to grief. Hector was all she had left. Husband, father, brother, protector. She pleaded for him to command from the walls, to avoid the front lines and the deadly spear of Achilles. Her love was desperate, willing to challenge his role as a warrior to keep him safe. Every word was a plea for him to choose family over honor. She held their son tightly, a living reminder of all they stood to lose. Andromaque's world revolved around Hector, and she could not bear the thought of losing him. Her appeal was simple: choose life with them over a glorious death. Hector listened, torn between love and duty. He confessed he'd thought of her pain and their son's future, but he could not abandon his post. Honor and responsibility to Troy outweighed his own happiness. He explained that shame and duty compelled him to fight at the front, not hide behind the walls. To forsake battle would be to forsake himself. Yet his greatest fear was not his own death, but Andromaque's suffering if Troy fell. He imagined her enslaved, weeping in a foreign land, and the thought was agony. Still, he had to fight, not for glory, but to protect her from that fate. His choice was a sacrifice, made out of love and duty. Hector's heart broke as he spoke, but his resolve was unshaken. He fought for his family's future, even as he feared he could not save them. The hero's path was set no matter the cost. In the heart of ancient Troy, Hector, the city's greatest defender, reached out to his young son, Astyanax. But the little boy, startled by the gleaming bronze and imposing helmet, shrank away from his father's outstretched arms. The sight of the mighty warrior, so fierce in battle, was frightening to the innocent child who only wanted the comfort of his father's gentle touch. With a warm, reassuring smile, Hector slowly removed his helmet, setting aside the mask of war. In that simple gesture, he transformed from the city's champion into a loving father, revealing the familiar face his son adored. The tension melted away and Astyanax's fear faded, replaced by curiosity and trust. Hector gathered his son into his arms, holding him close. For a brief moment, the chaos of war and the looming threat outside Troy's walls faded into the background. In the quiet of their home, father and son shared a rare, precious peace, a fleeting sanctuary from the world's turmoil. Stepping outside, Hector lifted Astyanax high toward the open sky, his heart full of hope and fear. He prayed to Zeus, the king of the gods, asking that his son might grow to be even greater than himself, a leader strong and wise, a protector of Troy, and a beacon of honor for generations to come. Hector's wish was simple yet profound, that Astyanax would bring pride to his family, joy to his mother's heart, and hope to a city besieged by war. He longed for his son to know happiness, to live a life untouched by the sorrow and violence that had become all too familiar. After his prayer, Hector gently returned Astyanax to Andromaque, his beloved wife. Her eyes shimmered with tears, reflecting both the deep love she felt for her family and the sorrow of knowing what fate might bring. She clung to her child, cherishing every heartbeat, every breath. Hector tried to comfort Andromaque, speaking softly and holding her close. He reminded her that fate is inescapable. No man can die before his time, and the gods alone decide the hour of our end. His words were meant to soothe, to offer strength in the face of uncertainty. Yet, despite his efforts, Hector knew that words could not erase her fear. The shadow of war loomed over them, and the future was uncertain. Still, he hoped that his presence, his love, might bring her a measure of peace, however small. The family's embrace was brief, a moment suspended in time, heavy with unspoken words and the weight of destiny. In that embrace, they found strength in each other, even as the world outside threatened to tear them apart. Hector's love for his son and wife was both his greatest strength and his deepest pain. Every glance, every touch was filled with the knowledge that their time together might soon end. As he turned to leave, Hector looked back at his family, imprinting their faces in his memory. He knew this farewell might be their last, and the thought weighed heavily on his heart. Alone now, Hector stood at the gates of Troy, the burden of heroism pressing down on him. Yet, with courage and love as his guide, he prepared to face whatever fate awaited him, determined to protect those he cherished most. With a final embrace, Hector urged Andromaque to return home and tend to her household. He donned his helmet, transforming once more into Troy's champion. Their eyes met in silent understanding. No more words could be spoken. Hector turned toward the gate, his steps resolute, leaving his family behind. Andromaque watched, heartbroken, as he disappeared into the dust of battle. She clung to their son, mourning him as if he were already lost. The city's fate and her own were now bound to Hector's courage. The gates of Troy closed behind him, marking the end of their last moment together. Andromaque returned home, joined by weeping women who mourned Hector as if he were already dead. Their cries echoed through the palace, a living funeral for Troy's greatest protector. Hector's farewell was more than personal. It symbolized the tragedy of the Trojan War. His struggle embodied the cost of duty, love, and honor. By choosing battle, Hector sacrificed his family's happiness for his city's hope. The fate of Troy and its royal family was sealed in that moment. As Hector marched to his destiny, Andromaque faced a lifetime of sorrow. Their story became a timeless reminder of the human cost of war.